Have you ever felt the quiet weight of your own limitations pressing on your dreams? The invisible hand that seems to hold back abundance, whispering that wealth is meant for others, not for you? Perhaps you've worked tirelessly, yet a subtle emptiness lingers, a sense that no matter how much you earn, it will never feel enough. That fear, that inner hesitation, may have followed you for years, woven into your very understanding of what is possible. Caleb, a former corporate executive, had walked this path all his life. He had once believed that success was measured in numbers, that climbing the ladder would bring freedom. But each promotion, each bonus, left a hollowness he could not fill. Deep down, he carried a conviction that wealth corrupted the soul, that pursuing money would somehow distance him from meaning, from spirituality. Opportunities slipped like water through his fingers, relationships frayed under unspoken tension, and his own creativity dwindled in quiet resignation. The life he imagined remained just beyond reach, as if the universe itself were testing him, not in malice, but in preparation. One evening, after another fruitless negotiation that left him drained and uncertain, Caleb noticed something unusual outside his window, a single candle flickering in the darkness, steady and unyielding. It seemed impossible that such a small light could pierce the night, yet it held his gaze, reminding him of a truth he had almost forgotten: even the smallest flame can illuminate the path forward. That night, he would later realize that 3 subtle teachings whispered by that solitary flame, lessons hidden in silence, in patience, and in unseen opportunity, would change everything. They were not lessons from a mentor or a textbook, but from the quiet rhythm of life itself, waiting for him to notice. This is the threshold where the unseen becomes tangible, where the journey toward unshakable wealth begins, not as a pursuit of coins, but as a reclamation of the self, of alignment, and of inner freedom. The path may be hidden, the steps imperceptible at first, but each moment carries a seed of awakening. Caleb's story is an invitation to look within, to recognize the beliefs that bind you, and to trust that transformation is possible. Welcome to Zen Companion, where stillness speaks and stories heal. Subscribe, and let us walk together through the quiet doors of insight, toward a wealth that reaches beyond the material, into the heart of your own life. The next morning, Caleb awoke with a subtle tension in his chest, the kind that signals both fear and possibility. That flickering candle from the night before seemed to linger in his mind, a silent summons he could neither ignore nor fully understand. In the rhythm of his usual day, emails, meetings, calculations, he noticed how mechanical his motions had become. Each action was a repetition of a pattern, a life dictated by rules he had long accepted as inevitable. And yet, the candle's quiet persistence tugged at something deeper, a call to shift, to question, to step into a reality where abundance was not an adversary but a reflection of his inner alignment. Caleb felt a sudden awareness of the beliefs he had been carrying like stones in his pockets. Money corrupts the soul. Wealth distances you from meaning. Only the lucky or corrupt become rich. These thoughts, repeated over decades, had become a silent code shaping every choice, every hesitation. And now, with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity, he sensed that those stones could be set down. But how? How could he dismantle a lifetime of conditioning while still walking in the world he knew? The universe often whispers, rarely shouts. That morning, it was a stranger on his commute, a young woman who paused to pick up a fallen coin and smile at him as though offering recognition without words. A fleeting gesture, yet it stirred something long dormant within him. He realized that these small, almost imperceptible signs were invitations, openings into a path that had always been waiting. Each moment, each encounter, each glimmer of possibility was a call to change, to notice, to awaken, to accept that the journey toward unshakable wealth was as much about inner transformation as it was about outer success. Caleb felt both dread and excitement, a paradox he now understood was essential to the path. To ignore it would mean continuing the silent suffering of limitation. To heed it would require courage, vigilance, and a willingness to question everything he had believed. That simple, wordless gesture became the first true signal, a symbolic trigger that the journey had begun. "Share this light with a heart seeking truth," he whispered to himself, as if acknowledging the quiet door opening before him, one step at a time. Despite the subtle call, Caleb's first steps were met with resistance, not from the world, but from within. His mind, trained for decades in caution and self-doubt, erupted in quiet objections. Who am I to pursue wealth without guilt? What if I fail? What if I betray the values I've clung to all my life? Each thought acted like a shadow, attempting to tether him to the familiar scarcity he had always known. Fear was not loud, but persistent, threading through his decisions and whispering that the comfort of stagnation was safer than the risk of transformation. Yet, the candle's flicker lingered in his memory, a fragile emblem of possibility. He began to test the waters in small, almost imperceptible ways. He would walk barefoot for a few minutes in the early morning, feeling the dew on the grass and imagining abundance flowing into his life like water. He journaled, not about profits or losses, but about the beliefs he carried, where they came from, and how they shaped the choices he thought were inevitable. These micro-practices felt awkward at first, like learning to breathe in a new rhythm, but each left a trace of inner light, a subtle crack in the walls of self-imposed limitation. Caleb also noticed patterns in his day, moments where fear whispered strongest, such as hesitation in conversations about money, reluctance to pitch ideas, or avoidance of opportunity. He marked these moments with a simple ritual, touching a small coin in his pocket, a reminder that fear could be observed without being obeyed. Slowly, these acts became a bridge. He was not yet free, but he was beginning to move, step by hesitant step, toward the unshakable wealth his soul had quietly been seeking. Even as doubt persisted, he felt the faint pulse of change beneath the surface. Each micro-practice was a gentle rebellion, a silent assertion that his life could shift if he could only remain present, attentive, and willing to act despite fear. Hold this moment like a lantern in the dark, and let it illuminate the unseen path ahead, he murmured, grounding himself in the quiet power of intention. One late afternoon, while wandering a quiet city park to escape the noise of his routine, Caleb noticed a small shrine tucked beneath the branches of an old oak. Its simplicity was disarming, just a weathered statue, a few coins, and a single candle burning steadily. Drawn closer, he felt a sudden sense of recognition, as if the shrine had been waiting for him all along. It was not a person, yet it spoke with clarity, a silent teacher offering guidance without judgment, inviting reflection through presence alone. Caleb lingered, placing his hands gently on the cool stone, and allowed the quiet to seep into his mind. Thoughts of scarcity and fear began to loosen their grip, replaced by the gentle realization that wealth, in its truest sense, was not merely a tally of currency but an alignment of intention, action, and clarity of heart. He realized that he had been seeking abundance outside of himself, while the first seeds of change were already growing within. A soft breeze stirred the leaves above, carrying with it the faint scent of incense from a distant temple. In that moment, he understood that guidance often arrives disguised, through a flame, a gesture, or the stillness of a place forgotten by time. The shrine became his mentor, and he committed to returning each day, listening to its silent teachings and reflecting on the subtle lessons that emerged from its quiet presence. The first trace of fear remained, but it was tempered by a new awareness. He was not alone in this journey, and wisdom could appear in forms unexpected, asking only that he notice. "Share this light with a heart seeking truth," he whispered once more, feeling the resonance of patience and presence fold softly into his chest. Over the following days, Caleb felt a subtle but undeniable shift stirring within him. The lessons from the shrine had begun to seep into the corners of his daily life, challenging the long-held belief that wealth was inherently corrupting. He realized that fear had dictated his choices for years, steering him away from opportunity, creativity, and authentic connection. Now, he sensed that change was not only possible, it was necessary. One quiet morning, before the city had fully stirred, Caleb lit a single candle on his desk. Its flame mirrored his breath, steady and deliberate, a symbol of clarity and intention. He placed a few coins beside it, not as a transaction or offering to anyone, but as a conscious acknowledgement of the energy he wished to cultivate. Each coin became a tangible representation of potential, a gentle promise to honor abundance as a natural, spiritual force rather than a threat. He then closed his eyes and visualized his life unbound by fear, seeing opportunities, relationships, and creativity flowing to him effortlessly. He imagined gratitude filling the spaces that scarcity had once occupied, and he whispered mantras of openness and trust into the quiet room. The ritual was simple, almost imperceptible to anyone else, yet for Caleb it was transformative, a first deliberate act of alignment with the wealth he had long believed was out of reach. From that morning onward, he carried the ritual's quiet energy into his day. He spoke to colleagues and friends with a newfound confidence, noticing opportunities he had previously ignored. He no longer recoiled from the possibility of abundance but began to welcome it, feeling it as a natural extension of his inner work rather than a betrayal of his values. Through this simple yet sacred practice, Caleb's perspective began to shift. Wealth was not a danger, nor was it a measure of worth. It was a reflection of inner clarity and the courage to act upon it. "Share this light with a heart seeking truth," he murmured softly, feeling the first tendrils of transformation wrap gently around his spirit. Even as Caleb embraced his first conscious steps toward abundance, the path was far from smooth. Old patterns of thought resurfaced like stubborn shadows, whispering that he was unworthy, that wealth would inevitably bring corruption or isolation. Every decision felt like a test, a hesitant offer to lead a new project at work, a moment of self-doubt when sharing his vision with a colleague, an internal debate about whether pursuing financial freedom was selfish. These trials were not grand or dramatic. They were quiet, insistent, and intimately personal, shaping his character with subtle insistence. Yet, he was not alone. A few allies appeared in unexpected forms. Mara, a former mentor he had once dismissed, offered guidance in casual conversations that ignited new ideas. A neighbor, who ran a small bakery, shared her simple yet profound wisdom about trusting the flow of effort and reward. Even the city itself seemed to conspire gently, sending small signs. A forgotten journal found on a park bench, a book left open to a passage on prosperity, a coin glinting in sunlight at just the right moment. These moments, seemingly minor, acted as encouragement, showing that the universe often meets those ready to act with subtle confirmations of possibility. Internal obstacles were equally present. Caleb wrestled with guilt and old narratives that equated wealth with moral compromise. He noticed moments of envy creeping in, subtle judgments toward others who appeared effortlessly successful. Each day required vigilance, a willingness to notice without attachment, to witness fear without surrendering to it. Through these trials, Caleb began practicing small sacred gestures. He walked barefoot along the riverbank, whispering intentions of generosity and clarity into the flowing water, acknowledging both the challenges and the possibilities. These acts became anchors, grounding him when the weight of old beliefs pressed hardest. In the quiet moments between decisions and doubt, he discovered a growing resilience, a recognition that every obstacle was a teacher, every ally a mirror, and every trial a passage guiding him closer to the unshakable wealth that lay not in gold or assets, but in alignment with his own spirit. Hold this moment like a lantern in the dark, and let it illuminate the unseen path ahead, he reminded himself, steadying his heart amidst the unfolding trials. Despite progress, a deeper disturbance began to stir within Caleb. The earlier sense of possibility now collided with the lingering weight of his subconscious doubts. He realized that embracing wealth was not merely about changing habits, it demanded confronting the stories he had long told himself about scarcity, fear, and self-worth. Late at night, he would lie awake, the quiet of his apartment amplifying questions that had been buried. Am I truly capable of holding abundance without losing myself? Will pursuing wealth betray the person I thought I was? This inner disruption was mirrored in his outer world. A promising project at work faltered when he hesitated to advocate for a bold idea, and a minor misunderstanding with a friend resurfaced old guilt over past neglect. The emotional tension was palpable, pressing on his chest like an invisible weight. Each moment reminded him that transformation is never linear. The deeper the call, the more resistance rises to meet it. Caleb began to notice that his reaction to these challenges was telling. Where once he would have recoiled or rationalized his fears, he now observed them with curiosity. He recognized that each pang of anxiety, each flicker of guilt, was an invitation, a signal that he was approaching a threshold of deeper change. In response, he developed a micro-practice to navigate the turbulence. Each morning, before the city awoke, he sat quietly with a single coin in hand, breathing in alignment and exhaling doubt. He imagined the coin absorbing the tension and radiating clarity back into him, a symbolic act to reconcile fear with possibility. Though subtle, it was profound, reinforcing that inner transformation precedes outer manifestation. The disruption was uncomfortable but necessary, a gentle but firm nudge toward awareness. The emotional call grew louder, reminding Caleb that he could no longer drift along familiar currents. He was being summoned to step fully into the path of abundance with courage, discernment, and an open heart. Share this light with a heart seeking truth, he whispered softly, letting the resonance of courage anchor him for the deeper trials to come. One evening, as rain streaked the city windows, Caleb faced a moment of undeniable crisis. A significant opportunity at work had slipped through his fingers, not because of lack of skill, but because of hesitation born from years of fear. The familiar narrative whispered that he was unworthy, that wealth would always evade him, that pursuing abundance meant risking his integrity. The disappointment sank deep, leaving him hollow and questioning whether the journey was even possible. He walked through the empty streets, letting the rain wash over his face, and felt the weight of every missed chance, every self-imposed limitation, every moment he had deferred life itself. Yet, amid the storm, a subtle clarity emerged. He recognized that his struggle was not with wealth, but with belief, the invisible chains of thought that had quietly governed his life. If he could release these patterns, the path forward would open, not with force, but with grace. Returning home, Caleb lit a candle and placed it beside a small bowl of water. As the flame danced, he whispered intentions for courage, alignment, and the willingness to receive. The reflection of the candle in the water seemed to ripple with possibility, and in that simple moment, he felt a breakthrough, the realization that fear is a guide, not a jailer, and that abundance arises naturally when one aligns thought, intention, and action. Tears traced gentle paths down his cheeks as a quiet liberation settled within him. The crisis had revealed the truth he had long been avoiding. The journey to wealth was inseparable from the journey to self. Hold this moment like a lantern in the dark, and let it illuminate the unseen path ahead, he whispered, allowing the breakthrough to anchor him fully in the promise of transformation. In the days that followed his breakthrough, Caleb began to notice a profound shift in the rhythm of his life. The fear that had once dictated his choices no longer held the same sway. He recognized that wealth was not an adversary, nor a measure of morality, but a reflection of alignment between his intentions, his actions, and the clarity of his heart. The lessons of the shrine, the candle, and the riverbank ritual were no longer isolated moments. They were threads weaving together a tapestry of awareness and purpose. Caleb developed a sacred morning practice to reinforce this integration. Each dawn, he would sit beneath the old oak in the park, a coin in hand, visualizing opportunities and prosperity flowing naturally to him. He whispered affirmations of worthiness and generosity into the cool morning air, imagining each intention rippling outward, touching every corner of his life. The practice was subtle, yet transformative, grounding him in both inner clarity and outer receptivity. At work, he noticed the difference in his interactions. Where hesitation once clouded his confidence, he now approached tasks with calm determination, open to collaboration and new ideas. Even small decisions, choosing a vendor, accepting a project, or offering advice, felt infused with a sense of purpose, as though each choice was guided by an inner compass rather than by fear. Caleb also began to reflect on relationships that had strained under his previous scarcity mindset. He reached out to colleagues and friends with renewed openness, offering appreciation and support where judgment or comparison had once prevailed. The integration of abundance was not just financial, it was emotional, relational, and spiritual, touching every aspect of his daily life. Through these acts, he realized that the internal shift was now steady and tangible. The teachings were no longer abstract lessons, they were lived truths, felt deeply in every action and intention. "Share this light with a heart seeking truth," he whispered softly, feeling the quiet joy of alignment ripple through his being. Weeks later, Caleb faced a final test that would reveal the depth of his transformation. A high-stakes investment opportunity emerged, one that could significantly expand his financial horizon. The old voices of doubt returned with force. What if I make the wrong choice? What if pursuing this wealth changes who I am? For a fleeting moment, he felt the familiar grip of hesitation, the echo of decades spent fearing abundance. But the difference now was palpable. Caleb had cultivated an inner alignment that allowed him to pause, observe, and respond with clarity. He lit a candle by his desk, placing a coin beside it as a reminder of the intentions he had nurtured over the past weeks. Closing his eyes, he visualized the decision unfolding in harmony with his values and the greater good. The ritual grounded him, connecting action with awareness, courage with discernment. He approached the opportunity not with recklessness, but with trust in both his judgment and the subtle signs the universe had provided along his journey, a colleague's encouraging words, the riverbank meditation that reminded him of flow, the persistent light of that first candle. Every prior trial, every whispered lesson, had prepared him for this moment. When he finally committed, he noticed a profound shift, not in the external outcome, but in the steadiness of his own spirit. Wealth was no longer something to fear or chase, it was an extension of the alignment he had cultivated, a reflection of his willingness to embrace life fully, without hesitation or guilt. The test confirmed that transformation is not a fleeting emotion but a lived, tangible state of being. The ritual, intention, and courage had converged, allowing him to navigate the outer world while remaining anchored within. Hold this moment like a lantern in the dark, and let it illuminate the unseen path ahead, he whispered, letting the resonance of clarity and trust infuse every choice he made from this day forward. Caleb awoke one morning with a quiet certainty that had once seemed impossible. The fear and hesitation that had shadowed his every move now felt like distant echoes, softened by the rhythm of practice, reflection, and alignment. He understood, with a profound clarity, that wealth was not an external prize to be captured but a natural reflection of inner harmony, intention, and courage. He began his day with a ritual of gratitude, lighting a single candle, placing 3 coins beside it, and whispering intentions of generosity and clarity. This symbolic act grounded him in the truth he had embodied through months of trials, micro-practices, and breakthroughs. Every breath carried awareness, every movement, whether in the office or on the quiet streets of his neighborhood, reflected his alignment with both abundance and authenticity. Interactions that would once have sparked anxiety now flowed with ease. Conversations, decisions, and even small gestures, helping a neighbor, mentoring a junior colleague, offering a donation to a cause, felt infused with purpose. Wealth was no longer a threat to his values, it was a medium for living them fully. Caleb felt a subtle joy in the integration of inner and outer life. He realized that the trials, resistance, and moments of doubt had not been obstacles but catalysts, forces that had reshaped him into someone capable of receiving, appreciating, and wisely stewarding abundance. In this state of resurrection, he carried forward the knowledge that alignment with inner truth transforms not only personal fortune but the very quality of life. "Share this light with a heart seeking truth," he murmured, feeling the embodiment of change radiate outward from the stillness within, a living testament to the journey he had completed. With the final lessons integrated, Caleb stepped into the world carrying the quiet radiance of transformation. His actions, once tentative and shadowed by fear, now flowed from a place of alignment and clarity. Wealth was no longer a distant dream or a source of guilt, it was a natural extension of his inner harmony, a reflection of courage, intention, and authentic purpose. Each day became a living practice of presence. He walked barefoot along the riverbank, letting the current carry his whispered intentions of generosity and gratitude. At work, he approached challenges with calm decisiveness, offering insight and collaboration without fear or attachment. In his relationships, he extended patience and openness, noticing the subtle shifts as trust and connection deepened. Every act, large or small, echoed the teachings he had absorbed, the trials he had endured, and the breakthroughs he had embraced. Caleb also felt a growing desire to share the light he had received. He spoke gently to colleagues about possibilities, offered guidance to friends who struggled with scarcity, and observed with compassion the silent battles others carried. He realized that his journey was never only for himself, it was a ripple, extending into the lives of those around him, a quiet testament to the power of inner alignment. As he lit a candle one evening, placing a coin beside it and letting its flame mirror the rhythm of his breath, he felt a sacred closure, the recognition that the path of abundance is inseparable from the path of presence and intention. If this story has stirred something within you, like Caleb's journey, let it inspire your own steps. Subscribe, share your voice in the comments, and carry this light forward into the world, one mindful action at a time.